So, who's starting? Yeah.
Hi, my name's Chris Thompson. I'm principal at Sixth Form College in Brighton. And I've spent a decade, I think, on reflection through today, really working very, very hard at engagement. And that's paid off. We've received outstanding grades from Ofsted, and I think that's been as a result of real engagement. But where I've come to, I think I was at reaching a bit of a brick wall and not understanding it very well, and I found today enormously helpful. An observation, if I may, or just a contribution. I think there may be a problem with the word engagement, and I'm particularly grateful to what I've been hearing from Unison colleagues actually about that, and I'm wondering if we're not struggling with a kind of boo word, hooray word issue here, you know, in the way that one can describe exactly the same person as a freedom fighter, which is a hooray word, that's good and heroic and brave, but you could equally describe exactly the same person as a terrorist, which is a boo word, and that's evil and nasty. When I actually think about the things I've heard about, the actual management practices I've heard described as engagement, I think they could equally well be called empowerment. And I'm just thinking that empowerment actually might ring very differently. I'll wait for the tin cans to arrive, but it might sound differently on Unison ears, perhaps.
Yeah.
And certainly what I'm thinking is that I've got to go back, and actually my first task is really a big discussion and a big ask of my senior management team to come with me, because I think actually the way forward for us is going to be about surrendering yet more, and put it in those terms, giving away more power in order to engage people, because from a senior management perspective, it's not just coping with people's fear that is a problem. It's at one and the same time, simultaneously, employees very often are very anxious, are very fearful, and carry a huge expectation that you, the manager, should sort it out. So there is an acquired disempowerment alongside, which is equally bad for everybody, So I'm very grateful for what I've been hearing today. It's really prompted some great thoughts. Thank you.
I just want to say on that, David and I, when we were writing the review, we did grapple with this point. You know, engagement had become a sort of totemic word, and the danger was it was becoming kind of devoid of meaning, always becoming, you know, a boo or a pro word. I mean, in the end, we decided to stick with it because there was so much literature, and we'd have to have spent half the report explaining why we weren't calling it. But I think your point about empowerment, which is what I was trying to say earlier, is that the absolute key, it seems to me, to the process of change in the public sector now is, there's a very simple word, rule of thumb, is that if you want to know how to do something better, ask the person who's doing it. And yet, in the public sector in particular, there's been, it seems to me, a culture of bringing in consultants, you know, to tell you things that basically your staff could tell you absolutely for free. And I think that there is a very strong sense of organisations in the public sector who have done engagement well. And in our report, you know, we did look at organisations like, for example, Blackpool Hospital Trust, who had to save £21 million. I mean, this was a very, very, very big deal that had to happen, because I think they were caught in exactly the same position as you were 4 years ago. And how, through engagement and empowerment, they did reconfigure services to hugely actually improve at the same time as cutting expenditure. I mean, they really did hugely improve patient outcomes, community outcomes, and in fact, you know, staff engagement too. So I think you know, what you said is absolutely, you know, spot on and a very important contribution. There was somebody over. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Jeff McFarling. I work at Wolverhampton City Council. And Anthony's point, I can't remember what the phrase was just now, but it sounded very, very similar to when I was first getting into management as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but probably before your time.
Might be older than you.
You've worn bloody well then.
We'll have a bet on it after, shall we?
And John Adler, I'd like to maybe be a bit controversial. The thing, when I first got into management, was that managers were trained to be managers, make decisions, and do that kind of stuff. I've worked recently in different organisations in the NHS and in councils. I'm just wondering, are we expecting the managers and senior managers that are going to make these decisions and help us through all this, are they ready for it?
Very good question. There was one other person I was taking. Yes, that lady there.
Hi there, I'm Jessica Woodhouse. I'm from Norwich City Unison and also Norwich City Council. I work in the Council's transformation team, so a lot of trying to implement some of these changes. So I've got dual hats on today. I'm also the comms officer for Unison, so I'm interested in the communication channels in organisations and how you develop the flow of information in organisations and achieve real and genuine two-way communication. And how you do that through not just staff surveys and not just relying on just union negotiations to think you've consulted with staff, or newsletters or emails and top-down doctrines, and how those of you on the panel here at the top of your organisations, how you really know what your employees are feeling, you know, on the floor, on the ground.
Thanks very much. I'm going to just add one question. One of the questions that was put in was about the potentially damaging effect of the cuts, and I think we've covered that. But there is one question that did come in, which I think is a very good one, which hopefully I'll enable every member of the panel as they answer those questions to be put, also to wrap up. It's, in your experience, what one thing has had the most impact in improving the engagement of staff and showing tangible results for your organisation? So if you could bear that in mind, as well as, I'm sorry to put, it was fantastic to see so many hands up. I'm sorry I wasn't able to take everybody, but we're already running slightly over. Jane's looking glaring at me, so I know that this is the case. Hugh, would you like to start?
Okay. On the question of terminology, engagement versus empowerment, I always sort of steer away from things that have a name attached to them. I'm much more guided by, and I think staff will be guided by, what actions people take in practice and what people do rather than the name that it's called. And we do have a civil service-wide employee engagement plan, which the majority of staff are completely unaware of. And I think this comes to the communication issue. As a union, we say we thank Sir Gus every time he sends out a letter to all staff, because it normally improves our ballot result and gets more people to join the union every time he writes to them all. And how do you do it? I mean, I'm going to go by our experience. When we've been trying and we've had difficult times, if you like, within the civil service, and we've had to put up with 100,000 jobs going in the last 3 or 4 years. It's not been, this isn't new, this is a continuation of the same. As a union we do it, the most effective way is literally to go and do face-to-face contact with as many members as we can. And I suspect that's the same for management. If management want to consult with their staff, it isn't through anyone else. It is by direct contact. And I think it was the question here. I do have a slight, as you might have noticed, a slightly cynical view of the senior civil service management about their background. But there is a genuine problem that the majority of them have got there historically, although they're trying to address it now, through doing no operational delivery management at all. They come from public school to university to fast stream to senior management of the civil service, and then tell people how to run the organisation without ever having delivered it as a manager at a lower level within the organisation. I think that is a huge weakness, and I suspect it's not unique to the civil service, that there is that when you're facing hard times, if you haven't had to manage in hard times yourself, it is very difficult. And what is the one thing I would say that has been most useful in terms of engagement? Unfortunately, the most useful thing that has got engagement from management has normally been the threat of industrial action that has brought them to come and talk rather than their preparedness to do it in advance. And I think that is a shame that that has been the case, but all of the agreements we've got about consultation, involvement, engagement and so on have been as a result of industrial action rather than to avoid or prevent it in the first place. And I think that's another lesson that maybe people can learn, that not to try and, if you like, close the door after the horse has bolted, but to try and have that discussion beforehand.